Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us. It's good to have you here. I'm your host today. I'm Colin Campbell. I'm the Director of Marketing at Sales Hacker. And what we've got for you today is special because I'm joined by Tito Bohrt. Tito, thanks for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure. Good to be here.
It's always good to have you back. For those of you who don't know Tito, he cares more about sales development and doing it right than anybody I've ever met. And it makes sense because he's the founder and CEO of Altisales, which, Tito, I don't know how you describe it. I know you guys do like a combination of consulting and outsourcing. How does that work?
Yeah, so Altisales is an interesting company. The way we think about ourselves is if you are a sales leader, you can either, hire a consulting company, let's say the British Group or Topo or somebody like that, to build a playbook and spend 50 to 100K to get it done. Or you can hire us and we will not only build the playbook, but start executing on it, iterating on it, refining it for 3 months. And then we give you that playbook back. So it's really, really awesome. And if you're a, manager or an SDR, we're like the perfect companion for any company that is trying to figure out the sales development portion of their company. And they just want an expert who really knows what they're doing, who's done this 30 times over, who follows best practices and just comes in and teaches them the right way to do it. So yeah, I'd say 80% consulting, 20% outsourcing, the best friend of any sales development organization.
The best friend of any sales dev organization. I love that. And that's why we like having you back on these webinars because you have the benefit of having done it, like you said, 30 times over. So we're all excited to learn from you and what you think and how you think about sales development metrics today, which, by the way, everybody, that's the topic of the day, sales development metrics. We're going to break it down and talk about a little bit about goal setting, like how to do it in right and wrong and how people end up focusing on bad sales development metrics, but also like what is a set of better metrics that you can focus on that give you better SDR morale, better retention, better goal attainment, better overall outcomes. And then to bring it all home, we're going to talk to you a little bit about how you can get from A to B. So if there's some things that you recognize you may want to improve on and how you set and report on metrics, we'll talk about, managing up, making some of the changes with your tool set, how you should go about reporting frequency, and also changing maybe how you communicate with and manage SDRs so that they're focused on better metrics. So there's a lot in there, and we want to make sure it's really valuable for you. So if you have a question for Tito or just want to make a comment, you can do that, and actually participation is required. If you join the live version, you're here for a reason. So let's start off just by at the bottom of your screen, probably right about here, click the Q&A button, open that up right now, and let us know your role and your company. You can share your name if you want to. Let us know who's here. And while you're doing that, I'll just add one other thing, which is that we are recording this session. So if you have to leave for any reason, or you just want to share this with like everybody in the world because it's awesome, you can do that. We'll give you the recording link tomorrow. So we've got Clay Nobles, bunch of great names here. A couple names I recognize. Thanks for coming back, people.
Yeah, so many cool people.
SDR manager at TrackMaven. Hi, Connor.
Tom, Kelsey, Vince and Mike, Casey, John, Alex. Man,
I love it.
Hopefully you all get so much value from this. Please do me a favor. As I share ideas and whatever, some of the ways in which we run sales development internally, if you guys have questions or comments, just type them in there. I'm gonna try to be looking at the Q&A here and there and answer them. Obviously, we just got it seems like over 70 people to send us their name and their company. So those have taken up a bunch of the space there, but the new ones will come at the bottom and I'll be able to see them. So this should be helpful for anybody who's either a current SDR or SDR manager, or anybody who's trying to move into leadership. Even if you're an account executive or you work in customer success, if you're thinking, hey, I sometime want to be at some point in the future, a VP of sales or a VP of revenue or a CRO, or even your own CEO in a B2B sales engine, this webinar should be super, super helpful. So.
Yeah, and I saw a lot of SDRs, SDR managers, a whole lot of other roles in there too. This is helpful for anybody in a sales org. I think most applicable if you're in a sales development role, but if you eventually want to be in any leadership role, you're going to have to know how to correctly set goals and metrics and manage a sales development team, or at least know something about that. So that's really what we're talking about today.
Somebody asked about it. Is this helpful for sales ops? Yes, definitely, especially the first part. You'll hear a lot more about metrics to set, how you set goals for your SDR team and so on. So why don't we kick it off, or what are you thinking, Colin? Let's go.
Yeah, let's start. Everybody just keep that Q&A window open. I saw somebody ask if we're recording this. Yes, we are. We'll send it to you later. So here's where I want to start. I know we're going to get into metrics in a bit, but like Tito, the way I think about it, and I think the way you think about it too, is people set metrics in the first place and measure things because they're trying to reach an end goal. And so like metrics come from goals, as we all know. And I think if you set a bad goal, it could lead you to measure bad things, and then it's just kind of a bad cycle. So let's talk about goal setting for just a hot minute. Like, why do people end up setting bad goals for sales development? And then how can it be done better than that?
Yeah, I'll tell you the way in which so many orgs set up their goals for sales development and why those are terrible ideas. I've seen things such as like, oh, let me Google, what is the average number of meetings an SDR should set per month? And then you get numbers all over the place, everywhere from like 5 to, let's say, 50, right? And this all depends on your average deal size, how big the companies are, if you're reaching VP level and C-level people, or just managers or end users. Are you inbound or outbound? There's so many variables that you can't just Google it, right? The other way in which companies set it up is like, okay, we're hiring 3 SDRs. How many meetings do we want per month? I don't know, 50? Okay, 50 divided by 3, 17. Okay, let's do 17. And then like, that's our goal. Like, none of those make sense. The best way to set up your goals is to look at revenue contribution and cost of revenue. And here's where this is very interesting for anybody who's going to move into leadership. SDRs are probably like, what the hell does this mean? Bear with me. So let's do an exercise. I'm going to ask the audience here. Imagine I give you all this deal today. I'm like, as part of the webinar, you can participate in this deal. You are today going to give me $12,000 right now. From wherever you can find it, you're going to give me $12,000. And I will give you $1,000 every month starting today. So today is May 7th. June 7th, you get $1,000. July 7th, 1,000. August 7th, 1,000. September 7th, 1,000. How many months would we need to go through for you to say, okay, this is a good deal, I would like to take it? Meaning, do I need to give you 20 months off of the $1,000 for a total of $20,000? 40 months, so you can get $40,000? 100 months? At what point would you say, I like this deal, it's fair, I'll take it? Obviously, everybody would say, oh, 1,000,000 months. Right, the more the better. We're all agreeing in that. But what is your sense? What do you think would be a good number to hit? And the reason I say this is, here's how software as a service works. Software as a service is a subscription revenue, right? So you spend a certain amount to acquire a customer, and once you have that customer pays you every year a certain amount. So it mimics the same motion. Colin, let's just do this live. Like, if I ask you for $12,000 today, and I'm giving you $1,000 back every month, how many months do we need to go through until you say, okay, this is fair? Is it 20, 30, 40, 50? Where do you are?
Yeah, honestly, the minimum I would agree to is probably, I was going to say exactly what Tom Grave just wrote in, 13 months. That's a 10%, just about 10%. It's a little bit more, but a little bit less rather. But yeah, I'd probably go like, 14, 15 months.
Right. So if you get 14, 15, you're making a little bit of money, right? Here's the problem. If you're giving me $12,000 today and you don't have $12,000 in the bank, now you need to borrow the money, and then you need to count on me paying you and things like that. So there's a little bit of risk. Now, in the world of software as a service, right, the point at which a venture capitalist says, this is amazing. I need to pour money into this company, is when you get to 36 months. You give me 12,000, and I'll give you 1,000, 1,000, 1,000, 1,000, 1,000 for 36 months. If you can get there, you win. Now, the other trick is you could vary the amount you're paying, right? So what if instead of saying I give you 1,000 each month, I just give you 500? You know, do we need to go for twice as many months? Does that change? Blah, blah, blah. So there are a lot of these financial metrics. These are called CAC payback period, which means customer acquisition cost payback period. How many months worth of revenue does it take me to pay back the cost of acquiring a customer? And then your lifetime value to customer acquisition cost ratio, meaning, you know, in this case, it was 3-to-1. 36 to 12 is 3 times as much. The reason why these numbers are important is because we want to try to figure out how much revenue does one SDR need to generate in order for this engine to be profitable. If I have purely outbound SDRs, and between the cost of salary, tools, data, management, office space, 401k, insurance, benefits, blah, blah, blah. Let's say we grab it all and it costs us $200,000 a year. Okay, how much money does that SDR need to generate to justify spending $200,000 a year on them? Once you have that formula, and there's a article I wrote on Sales Hacker very specifically to this, which is how to set your SDR team goals. People should Google it if you're interested. That will tell you how much revenue you need, and with that we can start setting goals. So I'd say that's the overall very high level. So imagine we say, okay, one SDR needs to sell, let's put a random number, $300,000 a year, or needs to generate $300,000 a year out of pure outbound. Now you can start backtracking the goals. Okay, so our average deal size is 50K, so we need 6 deals closed. Okay, if we need 6 deals closed, our average close rate is 10%, so we need 60 meetings or 60 companies in pipeline. Usually, out of the 60 companies in pipeline, from our first meetings, only half of them enter pipeline. So let's say we need 120 first meetings. Okay, 120 first meetings per SDR, 10 per month. If we hit 10 per month, we hit our financial metrics. And then if you're a smart VP, you might set it, you know, a little bit higher. You might say, okay, 12 meetings, right?
Yep.
Just so that if your team misses by a little bit, you still have a good business and you're not in deep trouble.
Right. Some stretch.
That's right. Some stretch.
And like that goes, whether you're in a SaaS business or not, setting your goals by some benchmark from like who knows what the survey was, or some supposed thought leader who's just telling you an arbitrary number, not the way to go about it, right? Like, find your own specific situation, look at the cost and the benefit of acquiring a customer. The math is pretty simple regardless of the business model, and then just work backwards, like Tito said. And that's how, that's how many meetings you should aim for.
Yeah. Across our clients and across what I've seen, the meetings per month per rep vary from like 4 meetings set or meetings performed. I mean, the meeting has to show up at the right time, otherwise it doesn't count, right? So from 4 all the way to like 40. That's the range, right? If you're selling very SMB, transactional, you can book anybody, really easy to sell, $100 a month or $3K a year type of company, then you're closer to the 40. If you're any enterprise product that costs like 50K or more, you're usually in the 6 to 12 range. If you're over 100K, you're usually in the 6 to 10 range.
Yep. So Bilal, good question, Bilal, just asked, like, what's a revenue to cost ratio should an outbound SDR be at? My question, I guess, would be, does that also vary depending on the product and industry?
Once you run the math, it's actually pretty standard. The way, and you should go to the how to set SDR team goals. You can run through all the math. If you're a US based and so on, given the cost of like insurance and blah, 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 usually it's 4 times your OTE. So if your OTE is 70K, usually you need 280K in revenue, right? And this is considering this is software as a service. If it is just a one-time sale, it could be 4 times bigger than that, right?
Yeah.
So I encourage people to go to that article or message me later. I can point you to it, or I can help you in different ways. So that's
Right.
just, we set up the framework. Now let's dive a little bit deeper into like
Let's get
what this
deeper.
means for
Yeah.
SDRs, how we measure, how do we get them there, right?
Right. Yeah. And so like what I see and hear people talking about, and I've been in businesses where I've seen this is the case, is people say like, okay, like let's take the onus off of the SDR. They don't have to think about this. We know that we need them to get 10 meetings a month. We know that it's going to take them about 100 calls a day to do that. So as long as they're doing 100 calls a day, I'm happy. 100 calls a day, this many emails, and they track their activity levels, right? Like, and that's a common problem, I think, not just from what I've seen, Tito.
Yeah, I think that's a huge problem, right? A lot of people are just like, managers that don't know how to measure success are just going to the reps and being like, make more calls, make more calls, make more calls,
Right.
make more calls, right? And like that's the way they manage. They think that the role of a manager is just to, put pressure on the rep or push them harder, and that's like the worst manager. I've said this before at conferences. I don't think SDRs need managers. When we're hiring SDRs, and if you're hiring SDRs too, and they're pretty, like out of college or just transferring jobs or whatever, or even anybody, man, like I don't hear any SDR who joins a company and they're like, let me figure out how I can do the least to work possible, or let me figure out how I can how long can I go sucking before they lay me off? Like, I don't think
Right.
anybody has that mentality, right? We're not in a factory job where we hate our lives and like it's the worst thing ever and like whatever, like we're doing some useless work. Like SDR work can be pretty fun. Like we're in the world of sales, we're trying to influence people, we're learning about products, we're selling cool technology, we're part of a great company culture, right? So in general, I think that the mindset of people is when you join a new company, most of the SDRs that I know of, and at least everybody I hire, comes with the mentality that says, how can I crush it? How can I do so well? How can I be the best? How can I succeed? So you don't need a manager to be like, make more dials. That's obvious.
Right.
You need a
Yeah.
coach. We don't need managers, we need coaches. We need somebody that can go understand the calls that you're making. What's the quality of those? Where are you making mistakes? Why are you not winning? How can we train you on it? And to be able to train your team, you need to measure it. Like, imagine if you were coaching a soccer team and you don't know how many good passes or bad passes, or a basketball team, or like, what's your free throw percentage, or your three-pointer percentage, or your field goal, or your steals, or your blocks. You're like, oh, Zion Williamson? I think he's good. Okay, what are his stats? I don't know, man. He just seems like he jumps high. So how high
Yeah.
does he jump?
Right.
I don't know. What? Like, what type of coach wouldn't know, how many points and how many rebounds? And it's so important to know the in-depth metrics that drive your business. So
Yeah.
I'd say the worst things that people track are number of calls, open rates, and reply rates. I don't think those matter at all. Yeah, I don't
Anybody
know.
here looking at reply rates?
I think a lot of people are going to say yes to that because that's what we're that used to be a marketing metric, right? Like,
Yep.
open and reply, the more your email gets open, the better. And that was because like back in the day and in the marketing world, if you get opens, at least you have views on your product. At least it's like advertising impressions, right? The more we flood people with our impressions, the more likely they are to buy. There's a correlation, but at the end of the day, today I get so many bad emails that like, you trying to trick me into opening an email is a really bad idea.
Yeah.
I mean, if the end goal of life, if we forget about revenue and all we want to get is open rates, I have a million tricks down my sleeve for getting you to open it, right?
Yeah.
Like, first name, I got your mom. Would you
Yeah.
not like be curious and weirded out by that and open it up and be like, what do you mean, right? Or
Yeah.
like email every male name and be like, Miss last name is with us. Kind of like, dude, like that'd be so scary. Or things like that. Like, obviously I'm doing an exaggeration. It would be a terrible practice to do that. But what I'm
Right.
trying to say is, let's agree first of all that the goal of an SDR is to set up the highest quality meeting possible, meaning find the company that is a good fit for your product and find a decision maker at that company and have them come to a meeting where they agree the topic that we're going to talk about. And that topic should be very much related to the product. So how do we optimize for that? The way we optimize for that is we measure the conversations as positive, neutral, or negative interactions, right? I don't care if my pickup rate is 10% rather than 5%. If when they pick up the phone, I'm like, hello, and they're like, are you going to use an auto dialer on me? Fuck off. Go to hell. Like, great, our pickup rate is up.
Yeah.
Nobody cares, right? So
right.
At the end of the day, I think that if we were to label our conversations as positive, neutral, or negative, right? I will label negative any conversation where the customer is pissed off or annoyed by our messaging. Neutral, any conversation in which the customer politely declines. And positive, any conversation in which the customer helps us move forward, meaning gives us a warm introduction or accepts a meeting or, tells us something positive. Then you can start grabbing all your emails. And imagine if every email you get back, everybody who's like, unsubscribe, go to hell, where'd you get my number, blah, 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 you mark as negative. Anybody who's like, no, thanks, not at this time, check back with us in X months is neutral. And everybody who says, sure, I'll take a demo, or hey, here's an introduction to Colin Campbell. He manages marketing for Sales Hacker. He's the right guy, right? And CC's calling on the email, that's a positive. Then you can start gathering that feedback and say, okay, maybe email A has a 4% reply rate, email B has a 3% reply rate, but wait a second. We've sent 10,000 emails to each. Out of email A, it has a higher reply rate, but there's a lot of no thank yous, and there's, out of the replies, a lot of them are just like, get me off your list. While template B has 3% reply rate, but in total, reply B actually has more positive replies saying, sure, we'll take a meeting, and it has 0 people saying, get me the hell out of this list, I hate you.
Yeah.
I'd rather go with the 3%. That gets more meetings and less annoyances versus the 4% that gets less meetings and more annoyed people.
And one of the nuances here too is so Tom Grave pointed out, like, no matter, calls don't matter by themselves, but calls do get meetings. So I think the point here, Tom, is that, like, you don't measure calls as the sign of success in the first place. Yes, if you have a rep who's not hitting the deeper level metrics, like for some reason all of their calls have a negative sentiment, or for some reason they're just not, booking enough demos, then you can go look at their activity and maybe that's the problem. But the activity level alone shouldn't be what determines how successful they are or not. Is that right, Tito? Is that how you think about it?
Yeah, exactly. So what I would say is, once you've established your goals for the SDR, let's say you've determined that because your average deal size and your win rate, your SDRs need to average 7 meetings a month. If your SDR is averaging 7, 8, 9, 10, why are you going to look at call count, right? Unless all your SDRs are at 10. If all your SDRs are constantly at 10, then you say, well, everybody's at 150% of quota.
Yeah.
Maybe then our product is just way too good. Our investors are going to be so happy. Let me now raise quotas even more. Contingent on everybody hitting over 130 or 140% of quota. Sure, raise the quotas. If not, just let them be. When do you go look at activity metrics? You go look at activity metrics when they are not hitting their quotas, right? Oh, your goal is 7, you're at 4. Okay, you're at 4. Before we hired you, we agreed you would make 100 dials a day and you would send 100 emails a day. Where are you today? Okay, so not only do you have the worst performing SDR in terms of meetings set, you also have the lowest activity. Okay, what time are you coming to the office? What time are you leaving? What are you doing to educate yourself? Are you coming to trainings? Have you read books? What are the other ways in which you enable your team? And if they're not doing any of those, then you have an honest conversation and you say, man, when you joined the company, you were excited about performing. We gave you these books. We gave you these trainings. We agreed upon agreed upon metrics, and these agreed upon goals, which makes sense. Your peers are hitting those numbers. You're not.
Yeah, and this is where it's important to distinguish between the coaching and the not coaching. Like, that's it's not a problem to look at the activity. It's a problem to only look at the activity. Right. And so like we got some questions here about how we track things. So we're going to actually talk about measurement and tools and tracking a little bit later. But so we were saying like there are 3 bad metrics that everybody focuses on: reply rates, open rates, and activities. And Tito, you had some good replacements for that, one of which was sentiment. We talked about
Right.
that. What are other like better level metrics that are good to focus on?
I think that the biggest is sentiment for emails, right? Positive, neutral, negative. And people are asking, how do you track it? If you use outreach, right? I'm a big outreach guy. It's not because it's a sales hacker or outreach is sponsoring. No, 0. And I get 0 pennies for endorsing outreach. I just use it a lot with my teams, and I've built 30 teams with outreach, so I like it. With outreach, you can use sentiment. So then every time you get a reply, they're working on an AI functionality that will now mark things positive, neutral, negative. But it's so hard for a machine to mark it, right? Because if they are, sometimes there's like weird ways in which you can say things that might mean that even though they're positive, they look negative, or even though they're negative, they look positive, right? So like when you're like, your call to action is like, so Colin, are you the right person to speak with? And you're like, no, I'm not. Talk to Jennifer Johnson, whatever, right? So the algorithm, when it says, oh, the negative is no, I'm not, oh, that's a negative reply, right? So then it would label it negative, and then talk to John Johnson. But that's a really positive outcome. Like they're just saying, I agree with your email. You have some insights to share. This is cool, blah, blah, blah. So what we do is we track it manually. It literally takes 1 second. Outreach allows you to have sentiment, and you can click, this email reply was positive, neutral, negative. And how many replies do you get? If you're doing this smartly and you're sending about 100 emails a day, right, and your reply rate is 2-3%, maybe you get 2-3 emails back every day. It literally takes 5 seconds to label it. And after you label it, and after like several weeks of you running that template or that ABCD test that you're running, now you can say, template A gets this many positive, template B gets these many positive, this many neutral, and these many negative. And the one I'm going to choose is this one, right?
Yep.
So it is, as of right now, semi-manual. I think it will get more and more automatic the better AI gets. The way I used to track this is literally on a piece of paper. I will label email A starts with this subject line. Email B is this subject line. Email C is this subject line. And then I would have 3 columns that would say positive, neutral, negative. And then I would tally my responses, positive, neutral, negative. And then at the end of the month, I'd go back and say, this email is working better. And once a month, I'd go iterate on my emails. I'm crazy obsessed with metrics. Yes, I am.
We're getting some really good.
As obsessed as I was, not anymore because you have better tools, but you still need to be diligent and take care of it.
And one of the things that's important to point out is when you're doing A/B testing, you can do it wrong and see something that seems like a result but really isn't. So Marie asked a good question: how many emails do you need to run through A/B testing to get tangible results? If you look around for like a sample size calculator or a statistical significance calculator, just Google it, you can answer those questions and you'll find like you need a certain number of emails to test the difference.
Go on, here, I'm going to give you the short answer and the long answer. The short answer is send at least 1,000 emails per template to figure out what's working, what's not, as long as you're getting 2-3% reply rate. The long answer is go on Coursera and take a course on a quantitative and qualitative methods for statistics, and you will do that. I have a few questions here I want to address really quickly. One of the companies here says self-plug, we already get 83% hit rate on positive and negative replies. That is terrible, by the way, terrible. Unless you have 100%, it's useless, because I can give you a TED talk that explains this, but imagine you have an HIV test that is 99% accurate, right? Imagine this, 99% accurate HIV test. Colin, imagine you go take this test and it says you have HIV. What are the chances that you actually have HIV?
Yeah,
most people would be like 99%. Wrong, 1% or 0% or 0.1%. Why? Okay, here's why. There's 1,000 people, let's say, I'm going to random numbers. 1,000 people have HIV, right? 300 million don't have it. Out of the 1,000 that have HIV, you grab 99% and it's 990. So we have 990 people that are positive and 10 that are negative from that sample size. On the 300 million, 99% is accurate and says it's negative. But out of the 300 million, 1% is inaccurate. So out of the 300 million, you get 3 million tests that come out positive. Let's say you don't have HIV, but the test is only 99% accurate, 1% is wrong. So now you got 3 million people who get their HIV test back and say, holy shit, I have HIV. In reality, they don't have it. So now you look at all your responses that say HIV is positive. HIV is positive. Out of the 1,000 that had it, it's 990, and now you have 1 million. So you have 1,990,000 people that got the results saying positive. Out of the 1,990,000 people that say it's positive, how many are actually positive? Only 990. So you being 99% accurate is still terrible, because when you say, oh, this is positive, I have HIV, holy cow, I need to freak out. You actually don't need to, because chances are that you're part of the million and not part of the 990. So it's a lot about sample sizes. I am a complete geek, and I go crazy about measuring these things and understanding statistics. I took all my SAT tests when I was going to college without a calculator. I am a math geek since I was born. My favorite game when I was a kid was to play maths. That's my dad, when we were going on a road trip, he said, Tito, what do you want to play? And I said, can we play maths? And they would give me mathematical equations I had to solve. So trust me on this. Take courses on statistical significance and measure it manually, because 83% or 85 or 90% accuracy doesn't help. The other question we got here, I want to address it really quickly. Do you like the idea of sending 1,000 emails per rep using things like Growbots or some other email testing? No. Really good short-term strategy, terrible long-term strategy. You will burn your market. You'll annoy so many people. You have no way to mark positive, neutral, negative. So many of them, because you're sending so many emails, you can't necessarily customize or, really make it for them. You're sending emails that are so generic that you'll just destroy your reputation. Like, yes, you might double your revenue this year, and then you're bankrupt. So we recommend very, very highly against it.
Yeah. So you don't have to be a huge math geek like Tito, but it does help. And like the devil is in the details here sometimes. So, Tito, we were talking about better metrics, and sentiment or disposition, depending on what kind of tool you're using, is a good one for email. What about for like on a even bigger than that? Like, I know you've mentioned account to demo ratio as one of your favorites. Can you talk about that and why you like it so much?
Yeah, I think that's the reason also why you don't want to send 1,000 emails per day. It's your account to demo ratio. So imagine you are a sales leader and you're building your team, right? And you say, okay, so we sell, let's say, to universities, and there's 4,000 universities that we can sell to in the United States. That's our market. Okay, imagine your first SDR. You're like, hey SDR, go and book meetings, and he literally goes to all 4,000 universities, finds the 3 personas you can email. There's 12,000 people, and he sends 12,000 emails month 1. Boom. You get 10 meetings or 15 or whatever, like semi-good emails, right? Cool. What are you going to do month 2? Email them again?
Yeah. There's a lot of diminishing returns there for sure.
Right. And how about month 2 doesn't even worry me. What are you going to do month 7?
Yeah.
And how are you going to hire another 3 SDRs? Right? So what are you going to do now? You're going to send them 3 emails a day from each SDR? Like, it just makes no sense. So why does account to demo ratio matter so much? Now imagine you have the same 4,000 schools. You have 3 personas. Day 1, you give your SDR 100 accounts out of the 4,000, and you say, put some effort and try to get as many meetings as you can from these accounts over the first month. Perfect. Gets 10 demos or 10 meetings out of 100 accounts. And then you're like, boom. 10 meetings are going to convert into 6 opportunities in pipeline, are going to convert into 2 sales, are going to convert into 50K. Yes, we figured out a model to turn an SDR, his work for a month, into 50K. We have another 3,900 accounts. Let's grab another 4 SDRs. Let's make a team of 5. Every month, now we target 500 accounts. 500, 500, 500, 500, 500. You go 8 months, you cover your 4,000 accounts. Boom. And then the question is, what do you do now? You just covered every account you can possibly go to. Hey, wait a second. Guess what? There are accounts that you haven't talked to for 8 months because you were very careful about it and you went account based and you had 100 accounts per SDR per month. After 8 months, priorities have changed. They're in a different moment, different situation. You go back to account number 1 and you continue to work again. 100, 100, 100, 100, 100, 100. And then you go back. So your account to demo ratio, if you can get it over 3 to 5%, genius. You're a beast. If you can get it over 10%, call me because I'm hiring. We're there. We're a little bit over 10%, and we're trying to find more people who are really smart about how they run things, and you can get 10%.
Anybody out there using account to demo ratio, and where are you at right now? Sorry, Tito.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Want to hear where people are at.
I'm looking at the Q&A. To ensure quality, how many calls per SDR do you recommend? It's all about the workflow page. So how many calls per SDR per day to ensure quality? It depends. Are they doing all their data research themselves? Like, how much information do they need to make the call? Do they have a script? Have you trained them on the different steps of the call? My SDRs will have a very, very streamlined process. We build the scripts, we build the workflows. Each SDR has an assistant who's a data researcher, brings them all the data. They don't do any prospecting. For us, we can get to about 80 to 100 calls a day. Our regular SDR, without all that, I would say 50 to 60. So Lawrence, how do you get each SDR to having 100 new accounts once a month fast? You don't need to. Here's what you're gonna do. You're gonna put your 4,000 accounts, imagine a funnel, and it's dripping. I call an account, and my strategy is I'm gonna touch each account, each prospect 9 times. I don't need you to replace my whole account. As soon as I've talked to this prospect and they have finished the sequence, meaning they have gone through all the 9 steps and they're out, then it says, I need a new account. So you give them 1 new one. There's just a queue of accounts ready to come in. Don't give the SDR accounts, because if I have gone after this account and I have touched them a lot and you're not wanting to replace it because as the VP of sales, you don't have new accounts for me, I'm just like spinning wheels trying to contact the same account. I'm annoying them, giving them a bad experience. Yep. They don't like me anymore. They put me in spam. In the future, I'm in trouble. So create a drip for your accounts. Build a list of 4,000, and I have an article about alphabet-based distribution. Start with A. Call in, you get American Airlines, you get American Express, you get Alpha Elite, you get this, you get that, boom, boom, boom. Drop him. As soon as the account is finished, meaning they have gone through the sequence, give him a new one. Give him a new. You don't even give them a new one. They go to the list and pick the next one and research it and put it in. So, how many touch points per contact in a sequence? It depends. Somewhere between 4 and 20, right? And it depends on your strategy. Is this the first time you're reaching out to them? Maybe closer to 4. Is this one of the 5 accounts that is your dream accounts? You're working with Pepsi. You would love to get Coca-Cola? Maybe 20, right? So I would need to become your VP of sales and do an investigation and figure out what you're doing internally and so on to give you very specific advice.
This is another, that's another metric where people will Google like, what's the average number of touches it takes, and they find like 18 or 7, and they go with that number. But Tito, as you've taught me, like it's kind of a self-fulfilling, what is it called? Prophecy. Like if you pick a higher number of touches, your average number of touches to get a meeting goes up, because you're going to end up getting some meetings on the 18th or the 20th touch. Doesn't necessarily actually mean it's better use of time or better for the end result.
Yeah, I also don't know any time where I have been like touched by a SDR 17 times and I'm like, yes, okay, this is number 18. I love it. Now I'm gonna take a demo. Like, especially if your message is generic or there's too many pings and blah blah blah. Like, nobody likes to be touched 18 times. Here's what I want as a prospect. Send me 2 or 3 messages, get my attention, and be so thoughtful and deliver value, right? So, and I'm going to tell you something. All these SDR gurus out there and whatever, consultants and blah, 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 are talking about value, provide value. I'm going to give you some examples today. Let's get on it. Do you think that's helpful, Colin? Or what does people say? Example. So, one of the companies that I work with, they're my friends, my clients, and I'm an investor in the company. It's called PIO, P-I-I-O. rampant.co. What they do for companies is they optimize the images on your website. So imagine you're an e-commerce company, you have products, you have images, and I bet everybody has been in this situation, right? So you're at home, you're like watching TV, blah, blah, blah. You're watching basketball, the finals, the Warriors go on a timeout. What do? You grab your phone, you start browsing through Instagram or Facebook or whatever, click on an ad, get to a website, right? If the website takes 2 to 3 seconds to load, you look around, see the Doritos, you go grab the Doritos, then you go, boom, you go back to your phone. Oh, you got an Instagram notification, you get out of the website and you've lost. So what PO does is we make websites run faster by perfecting their images to make them pixel perfect and the right format, and we compress them and we do all these things to make them perfect. Okay. When we go to clients, what do we tell them? We don't say, hey, your website sucks. We don't say, hey, we can get you more revenue. Here's what we say. Hey, John, I was looking at your website and seems like your images aren't fully optimized. I looked on Built With and it seems like you're already using a CDN and I see you're running Facebook ads, but have you looked at optimizing the images on your website? What are you doing for that? And they're like, nah, man, we do X. We do a CDN. We do this.
Yeah.
John, this is genius. Look at this report that I built for you, right? And then PO has a custom report you can build, or you can pull reports from different places, right? Google has a Google Developers tool where you can get a report. Webpagetest.org, you can get a report on their website speed, right? So, hey, John, here's our report that we run on your website, or here's the test we run on your website. It says that your images are slow. Our technology is currently being used by X, Y, and Z companies to perfect their images, and we've been able to speed up their site by 400%, which has highly increased revenues. I think this would apply to you as well. Would you be open-minded about a quick conversation over the phone? Thanks. What do I feel as a prospect? You have come to me. You have found something interesting about my website. My images suck. You have told me about it in a prospect-centric way in which you're helping me discover an insight that I didn't know about. Shit, I'm not doing anything for images, and the reports are saying my images are big and my website's slower than it has to be. And then after that, you close me not with like, do you have 15 minutes tomorrow? But would you be open-minded about a quick phone conversation about how we can optimize your images just like we did for X, Y, and Y and Z, other e-commerce companies that sell similar products in your similar space? If you're able to do that, that's what I call providing value. Who determines if value is provided in an interaction? Not you, not your boss, the prospect. Here's the question you need to ask yourself every time you write an email or every time you talk to somebody on the phone. By the end of the call, on a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being, what a fucking waste of time, 10 being, this was the most awesome conversation I've had today, I've learned a lot. Where are your emails? If your emails are, if your prospects are saying, this is the most awesome conversation, I've learned a lot. Yes. You have won, you have provided value, you get meetings. If your prospects are like, what a waste of time, I hate salespeople. Not only have you lost and you're not going to get meetings, you're probably not going to be in that job too much longer. Your company's going to fail. You're going to make the sales development job harder for everybody else, because then when my team calls and we're trying to provide value, we're like, hey, John, this is Tito from Altisales. They're like, go to hell, I don't take cold calls. And that's because so many other people have called before and give them a bad experience. So be conscious of that. Provide value in the way I just taught you how to do it.
And this is probably where that's the third metric that you like to focus on. So you said sentiment, account to demo ratio. The third one you mentioned to me was, let's see if I can remember, number of decision makers connected with to the number of actual meetings that hold, right?
That's right. So when you talk on the phone, this is one of our most important metrics, right? Every time a decision maker picks up the phone, let's say I'm calling Campbell and I call Sales Hacker and somebody's like, hello, thanks for calling Sales Hacker. This is Amy. How can I help you? I don't consider that a connect. I only consider it a connect if I'm like, hey, Amy, this is Tito. I'm calling for Colin. Is he in? And she's like, sure, 1 second. Then you say, hello, this is Colin. Boom, connect. Now, out of the people I connect on a daily basis, how many of those end up taking a meeting? The higher the number, the better, right? The best SDR I've ever seen in a month, he got 55%. This is unparalleled, never seen before. You can never benchmark your team to this because you would be like the best SDR organization in the world. My great SDRs are around 20 to 25%, meaning 4 people pick up the phone and say hello, and we get a meeting. Average in the industry, I think, is around 6 to 10%, meaning it takes you between 10 and 16 hellos to get a meeting. And if you're really bad and you don't have a structure, you don't have training, whatever, I've seen things as low as like 2%.
Yeah,
meaning you might
that's
need
what
to
I've seen.
talk to like 50 people, pick up the phone, say hello, and out of 50 you get 1. If you're there,
Yeah.
you either need to hire a trainer. There's lots of them out there. I don't just do training for one person, but if your company wants to like bring a trainer in-house, feel free to call me. And you're gonna figure out a script, a workflow, step by step. What do you do first? You say this. How do you build credibility then? You say this. How do you like explain the product simply? Say this. What questions do you ask? Say this. You can build it for every company. We do this. I've built over 30 now and we're doing very, very well. But that's the mindset. Try to get as many people who pick up the phone to take a meeting. If you're under 10%, there's a lot of room for improvement. If you're under 5%, you're really like doing something wrong. If you're under 3%, you need urgent help. That would be my advice on that metric.
One of the things that strikes me about the way you look at metrics versus like the most common approach is that it seems to me like the common approach really has a focus on efficiency. Like, are my reps using their time well? And it sounds like you, in the hiring process, just focus on making sure you get people in the first place that care about being productive and using their time well. And then once they're hired, your focus is on making them effective more than it is making them efficient. Is that a fair way to sum it up?
Yeah, man. I think like that is maybe the biggest malpractice in SDR management, trying to make sure your SDRs spend as much time on their desk as possible.
Yeah.
Like all the leaders being like, yeah, the turnover for SDRs is so bad. And then being like, go back to your desk, make 100 calls. Are you kidding me? Who wants to work for somebody who's like, go back to your desk, make 100 calls, right? It's a horrible job. So I think that like the way to manage it and measure it is if you're managing your pickup from decision maker to demo ratio, if you're measuring your positive, neutral, and negative sentiments on emails, if you're measuring your account to demo ratio, and those 3 are dictating your success, and you can coach your reps on how to get better. First, as an SDR manager, if you don't know how to do the job of an SDR better than all your SDRs, leave, find another job, move to another industry, or train yourself. Go read about statistics, go learn about management, read books, the 1 Minute Manager, whatever. Email me if you want books on management. I'll give you some, right? Radical Candor, like blah, blah, blah. There's so many good books you can read and get better. There's really good training. Sassy Sales Management is a company that runs excellent training. Matt Cameron, I love the guy. It's mandatory for all my SDR managers to go through it. But unless your SDR manager can do the job better than the SDRs, how can he coach him on being better, right?
Yep.
Like when I go work for somebody, I want them to be able to teach me the job, right? At least teach me the insights. I mean, this is happening even in professional sports. Like some of the best coaches used to be players as well. I mean, look at John Wooden. He was an amazing player and then became an amazing coach. I love soccer. If you look at Zinedine Zidane, he was one of the best players. He became a great coach. It's not a prerequisite to be the best player ever to become a great coach, but it is very important to be a good player and to understand the basics of how the job is done. Somebody who's never been an SDR and wants to be an SDR manager, you're so up for failure. And if you have any good SDRs, send them my way. We're hiring, and we have really good managers.
If you do so yourself, right, Tito?
Exactly.
One of the things that, so actually really quick, Grove Scruggs, you asked if there are other articles or webinars for setting goals based on the business model for overall inside sales goals. Yeah, we've got tons of that on Sales Hacker. Tito's got several useful articles on that. You can also look out for Jocko Vanderkooy's articles on Sales Hacker, and Rob Jepson has some good stuff too. But there are several more I'm sure I'm not thinking of right now.
Yeah.
Uh,
One very interesting one is SaaS Metrics. And you'll have to find it. It's one that explains the HubSpot metrics. It's SaaS Metrics by David Skok.
yep.
SKOK. He is genius about this. Is very VC level revenue based metrics, but David Skok is a beast for that. He has a very long article. It'll take you half an hour to read, but I promise you that after that half an hour, you'll be a better human. So I highly recommend you read it.
Yeah, that's a good tip too. So right at the top of the conversation, and we haven't addressed this question yet on purpose, but we got a question which was like, if I'm an SDR and I feel under the thumb of my SDR manager and I want to try to nudge them toward some more useful, more effective ways of measuring. Or maybe you're an SDR manager, but your senior leadership expects you to behave a certain way and you want to start teaching them like, let's move to point B. We're at point A, let's get to point B where we're looking at sentiment, where we're tracking account to demo ratios, where we're looking at connects to demos with decision makers. Like, what are the things, Tito, that you would do managing up systems-wise to get from point A to point B?
Yeah, so it's a little bit about how you get buy-in from anything, right? How do I get my management team to adopt the metrics that I'm talking about? And it was really funny. I could actually go and tell a childhood story really briefly here, which will illustrate the point. When I was a kid, being a Real Madrid soccer fan, right? I went to my dad when I was 7 years old, and I said, you know what my dream would be? I said, what would your dream be? And I said, I'd love to go see Real Madrid play a soccer game live. And he said, oh, if you want to go, we should go. I'm like, no way. He's like, yeah. I'm like, oh my God, you're the best dad ever. And I run around the house, get super excited. A year and a half later, Dad, you know what I really want to do? He's like, what do you want to do, son? And I was like 5 years old, 7 years old, whatever, right? And I'm like, I'd love to go see Real Madrid play a soccer game against Barcelona. He's like, would you really? I'm like, yeah, I'd love to. He's like, well, if you want to go, we can go. And I'm like, oh my God. I get super excited. Many years go by and we never end up going to Madrid. And I turned 16. I'm about to go to Spain or to Germany for an exchange program in Germany. And then I go to my dad. And I'm like, Dad, you know what? He's like, what? He says, I've wanted to go see Real Madrid play a soccer game live for so many years, and I thought you were going to take me, and you never did. He said, I never said I would take you. I said that if you wanted to go, we would go. And he said, but you never wanted to go. I'm like, what do you mean I never want to go? I did want to go. He's like, no, you didn't want to go. I'm like, I did want to go. He's like, no, you didn't want to go. So I got really pissed. I'm like, this is so unfair. Like, I wanted to go. And then he says, no, son, come here. Let me explain it. So sit down. I'm like, okay, what? Right? I'm all mad. He's like, here's the truth. I put myself in your shoes, Tito, and the way I see the world is different. If I really wanted to go to Spain, here's what I would have done. I would have found how much the tickets are to get into the game. I would have found plane tickets. I would have found a hotel. I would have found what the tour of Madrid looks like when the game's playing. I would have called my dad's receptionist. I would have asked about his calendar. I would have checked if he can take 2 days off. I would have made sure that was okay. I would put everything in a folder with all the schedule, all the hotels, all the plane tickets, all the tickets to the game. I would go to my dad and say, Dad, you said that if I wanted to go to Madrid, see Real Madrid play live against Barcelona, we would go. Here's the schedule. Here's all the tickets. It costs $10,727, and we're going September 14th. Can I have your credit card? I said, if you would have done that, we would have gone. You just didn't want to go. And I was like, oh shit, he's right. Right?
Yep.
And the reason I tell this story is because when people ask me, how do I get my management team to adopt these strategies? I say, you have to put in the work. If you really want them to change the way they're measuring you, you do the work. Go figure out. I just put this Skok article that Max Kaplan, thank you, Max, for sending it over in the Q&A. Go read that, print it, bring it up to your management team, grab Excel sheet, go to my how to set SDR goals online calculator that I have on Sales Hacker, put all the work, put all your assumptions, bring it up to management and say, hey, management, our current goals is 15 meetings a month, which is stupid and ridiculous because our average deal size is X plus C and all these calculations. I think it should be 7. I'm currently hitting 10. I should be over quota, not under quota. You know, I'd like for you guys to review this. Can we look at it? And then you'll get your team to start thinking differently. Same with like positive replies versus neutral replies versus whatever, same versus account to demo ratio over spraying and praying. You know, go find the information, figure out what's right, what's not. Sometimes you'll have to ask your team to invest money in you in training. Again, SASE sales management is a good training course. You know, there's trainers, there's resources out there. But if you put in the effort, you'll find it, and you just build a plan for it and present it to management. And if they listen, they're going to change. If you have a management team that actually cares about you, they're going to listen, they're going to change. And if they don't, and they're not going to change, dude, you picked the wrong company to join. You should leave. Go somewhere else. If you're a top performer and they're like destroying your morale, just giving you super high goals, and it's not working out for you, there's plenty of companies that hire more SDRs. And I mean, we hire remote SDRs all the time, all over the nation. Like, what's preventing you from taking chances somewhere else where people know what they're doing?
There it is. Do the work. And then for having the actual conversation, if you feel odd about that, if you're in sales development, you're probably pretty comfortable with difficult conversations, but Radical Candor is a great book for helping manage up.
Yep.
So we've got a couple minutes left, and I want to make sure we get some extra help here. So Grove Scruggs had a question in the Q&A. Said, in some cases, my SDR team never has a phone call with the prospect. Everything's done by email. So the initial outcome from an email sequence might be that there's a discovery call scheduled. But sales development is only compensated on the presentation that would then happen after discovery. So if the prospect actually shows up, I assume, to the demo call, would you still use the DMs connected metric in that situation, Tito?
So the first thing I gotta say is that any company that is like just, you know, compensating the SDRs on the second meeting rather than the first meeting needs to read an article. I'm gonna post it here too, which is SDR to AE handoff problems. If you are asked to, if you're compensated on second meetings, but your job is to get them to show up the first meeting, and then it's up to the AE to set up the second meetings, you need to read that article and go give it to your management and be like, this is completely unfair. Here's what happens, right? You are going and putting so much effort into setting the right first meeting. You're getting the right prospect from the right company to show up. And then the AE, if they're not great at the first presentation, and if the prospect is not already interested, meaning they're an inbound, what they're going to do is they're going to say, I don't want this in my pipeline because I don't want to be accountable for this closing. I don't want my VP of sales to be all over me. So I'm just going to say this didn't move. And I'm just going to leave it behind in this like limbo area where there's nothing the SDR can do to move it forward, and the AE will refuse to take it. And if you have that in your company, you're so screwed as an SDR. What you need is to read that article. It will show you how SDRs will go all the way to the first meeting. And the first meeting just needs the right person at the right company. If that person shows up at the right company, it enters pipeline, yes or yes. And the answer is yes, it will enter pipeline. And now it is the sales team that needs to recalibrate what is their close rate on outbound versus their close rate on inbound, how they manage outbound demos, train on it, and get better at it. So do you still measure account to demo ratio? I would always measure that. I think that's the primary measure of success, right? It's like how many accounts you get, how many demos you get. But again, sometimes in some companies, there's very specific things, like we're email only, we're doing only this, our target market is segmented into all these different ways. Is it fair to measure? Like, yes, like there are gonna be cases where things are not exactly the way that they are supposed to be. Unfortunately, I can only give you the advice on the 95% of things that are the best. Those 5% cases that are outside the ordinary, you got to think for yourself and decide, or hire a consultant from kind of like my train of thought or thought process, and have them really spend a few hours, look at it, and give you advice. It's just not cheap, right? So, like, you know, your choice at the end.
Yeah. Tito, we got to wrap it up here, but thank you so much for joining us. sharing in detail how you think about sales development metrics, why it's important, and really it seems like arming some people with information and arguments they need to go make some changes on their end. We got some good questions that we didn't get to, everybody. I'm sorry, we'll do our best to cover those either in articles that we have coming out, so if you're subscribed to Sales Hacker, or in future webinars. We'll definitely have to have Tito back again soon. Tito, if people want to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
Find me on LinkedIn, Tito Bohrt. You should see my name on the screen, Titobohrt. Just say I came to the Sales Hacker webinar, saw your content. That's it. I'll accept you as a connection on LinkedIn, and you'll get to see a lot of my posts, podcasts, webinars, all this stuff. And I don't spend too much time on creating content. Maybe once every 2 weeks or 3 weeks. All the content I create is mine. I'm focused on running my business and making my SDR super successful, making my manager super successful. But if I can give you any additional value, yeah, happy to do so.
All right. Great. Thanks again for stopping by, Tito, and thank you all for joining us. I hope to see you on another Sales Hacker webinar soon. Have a great rest of the day.